Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder when I step off the train and record an episode for you while I walk home. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, greetings. My apologies for the slightly delayed publication schedule last week. It was a busy week and I was still sort of recovering from the tiredness of my conference. Hopefully I am back into a regular rhythm now. I have about a month left of my spring semester, which has me thinking about how I will be continuing this podcast come summer, if I will. Perhaps I'll put it on hiatus and resume it again in the fall. It'll be just something I'm doing when I'm commuting. I don't know. We'll see. If you have opinions about that, please drop me a line. As usual, you can reach me at Brendan@RattleboxGames. You can tweet at me at rattleboxgames.com or rattleboxgames on Twitter. Or you can visit the website rattleboxgames.com where we have pages with show notes and contact information there. Okay, that boilerplate is out of the way. In case you're wondering about the weather, I know that's a key part of the show, a fan favorite. It is nice weather today. I'm wearing a winter cap but no gloves. I would say it's in the mid-40s right now. The sun is kind of out, but we've got spotted gray clouds with some peaks of blue through the cloud cover. So kind of mixed day. It's brisk weather, but not cold. About what you'd expect for early April. It snowed on Monday, which was horrible. You don't expect snow in mid-April or early April. And makes you mad when it happens. So that's the weather update. Gameplays have been fun this week. I've continued playing Mythos Tales with my wife. That's been pleasant. We got some Gloomhaven in over the weekend. My character leveled up to level 3, which was nice. And we played a game of Bunny Kingdom, which led me to my topic for today. Bunny Kingdom, if you don't know it, is a recent game from Yellow Publishing, IELLO, by Richard Garfield, creator of such luminous games as Magic the Gathering, Android Netrunner, or just Netrunner. Android Netrunner is the new version, and Robo Rally. Bunny Kingdom is I don't know how you describe it. It's area control with mathematical scoring and drafting, I guess would be the best way to describe it. It's very cute. So when you play, you have a whole bunch of little plastic bunnies and you're using them to make a kingdom. As I said before in a previous episode, it reminds me a little bit of Torres, the old Kiesling and Kramer, I think, game where you multiply things together to get your score. And so kind of being aware of how that multiplier works is a crucial part of getting points in Torres. And Bunny Kingdom works the same way. That whenever you're scoring one of your kingdoms, you have these little city statues that you're putting out, or these city tokens, and the city tokens have 1, 2, or 3 towers on them. And when you are scoring one of your little kingdoms, or fiefs, you multiply the number of different resources your kingdom produces. So if you do like carrots and wood and fish, by the number of towers in the cities in your kingdom. So if you have a 1 and a 2 and you have carrots, wood, and fish, then your score is 9 for that fief. It makes for interesting, if thinky, play. Like Seven Wonders, you also start with a hand of cards. In a 3-player game, you start with 12 of them. You take 2 to add to your kingdom and pass the rest along. So when we were playing, there were several times where I was the last person to make my selection at the table, and I found it really tricky because I had more than 2 cards in the hand that I really wanted, and I knew if I let them go that they would find their way into somebody else's game before they came back to me. And so I was really struggling with figuring out how to proceed in terms of getting my card selected. So this gave me a new topic for today, something to think about, and I guess it stands kind of in contrast to one of the first episodes I did of this podcast. One of the first episodes of this podcast was about the feeling of not quite enough. One of my favorite experiences in gaming is when you are really trying to do something, and no matter which way you turn the puzzle, you don't have quite enough of whatever the resource you need is to make the thing happen. And that's something I really enjoy as a feeling. But I've discovered another feeling that emerges in some of my favorite games, which is kind of the opposite, which is too many choices. So a lot of games, I just thought of another one that I will add to this. A lot of games that allow you to score points in multiple ways end up presenting you with an endless forking path in which all the forks are wonderful, but you know in your head that some of them are a little bit better than others. And certainly the danger of this, right, is the experience or the phenomenon commonly called AP by us hobby board gamers, the phenomenon of analysis paralysis. The idea that you have so many choices to make and you know you want to make the right one, so you get bogged down in trying to figure out how valuable each one is. And that happens to me a bit, but generally then I would just go with my gut and pick the one that I think seems the best. Because I don't like to be the last person picking and holding everybody else up. But Bunny Kingdom is certainly a game that fosters this experience. I've only played it twice so far. I don't really want to do a review of it. I'm not ready to put a score for it on Board Game Geek. And I didn't intend for this to be a shooting from the hip episode, although I have just given you maybe 3 minutes of stuff about the game and how it makes me feel, so take that for what it will. But what I want to talk about was this feeling of too many choices. And the games in my collection that I have that I really like that put me in this position. So I have 3 that I wrote down on my little sheet here, and one more that I thought of while I was talking just a minute ago. Aren't you experiencing the joy of live podcasting? It's great. Okay, so the game that I most experienced this with, the idea of too many choices, of trying to figure out the best path among all of these different things, is the game Matainai. Matainai is a Carl Chudik game. I believe Asmodee is the publisher, which is different than Asmodee. And it's just a card game, but each card has a bunch of different things that it can do, depending when you play it and where you play it. So you can use cards as resources, you can use them as helpers, you can use them as things you build, you can use them as materials for building the things that you build. And of course, all the cards are wonderful, so you never want to give up any of them, but you have to give them up. You have to spend some to get the others, and so you're constantly double thinking yourself. You're constantly sort of backing up and going, wait, that's not the best idea, I got to do this, and but if I do that, then I can't do this over here, and it's really great. Added on top of that is the fact that a lot of the cards in Matainai are crazy powerful. So you'll be playing and somebody will put a card into play and you're like, wait, that's not fair. How can you have a card that does that? And then you look at your hand and you realize you have 3 cards that are just as powerful in different ways that you could put into play and turn the tables back on them. So Matainai would be my top example of a game that just has so many choices and it's so wonderful. Of course, in the other media, I've heard this phenomenon referred to as being brain burning. The idea that your brain just has to work so hard to try to figure out what you're going to do that you get a little overheated. So the 3 other games I'd like to mention, the first one, I'm putting this in the maybe category. I distinctly remember this, but I've only played it the one time, and I really liked it. We just never got it back to the table. Was the Mind Clash game Trickerion. Trickerion is, of course, a game about making magic tricks and being a magician in a kind of weird alternate universe Victorian magician place where there is actually secret magic or something. The plot is really weird in the game, but really it's a worker placement game with very limited amounts of workers and really constrained resources and processes. So your ability to get stuff done is really difficult. And so you spend a lot of time just trying to figure out what's the right order to put your workers in and how to do that if your opponents take the spot you want. And it's really good, but really brain burny. That kind of feeling is very strong in that game. Another game that I would say gives this feeling pretty strongly to me is the Vladimir Suchý game Last Will. I've talked about Last Will before. It's one of my favorites. In Last Will, you are a wealthy layabout whose rich family member, I think your rich uncle in the game, has said that he will leave you money, but only if you promise to spend it profligately, spend it like it's going out of style. So in the game, he gives you a bit of money, and you have to do your best to spend it as fast as you can. At the end of the game, the player who has the least money, and you can actually have a way to go into debt, the player who has the least money at the end of the game wins the game and inherits the rest of the money or whatever. It's like Brewster's Millions, really. It's a really fun game, but again, it's a game where you have a lot of choices and not enough actions to pursue those choices. The actions you can take are relatively limited, like in Agricola or like in, I guess, Tricarion. The ability to get an additional worker is a huge boon, and you got to do that. So the other Mind Clash game that I often talk about is Anachrony. I would not put Anachrony in this spot because while you do have a limited number of workers in Anachrony, I often find that it's the spaces that are limited more than the workers. It's not that I don't have enough workers, it's that by the time I'm ready to go build a building, all the building spaces are gone. And that to me is not the same problem as in Matainai or Last Will or, to a degree, Tricarion, where the problems are more, there's lots of choices of things you might do, but just you don't have enough actions to get them done. You don't have quite enough to get them done, and trying to figure out how to do it, how to maximize the payoff for each of your actions is a key part of the game. The last game that I'd like to describe that fits this brain-burning spot in my collection is a game that I really like. It's the only Stefan Feld game I have because most of the Stefan Feld games, I think the theme just looks so dull that I have trouble thinking I might want to buy it. I would say the two Feld games that I'm interested in where the theme doesn't look that dull would be Luna and Merlin. Both of those sound kind of interesting to me. Oracle of Delphi sounds like it's not up my alley for gameplay. Those other two I would be pretty keen on. Or, if somebody had Trajan out at a game con and said, hey, you want to come learn Trajan? Absolutely I do. But theme-wise, that's not going to be something I'm probably going to go buy. But the game that I like the theme most on, and a game that I really like, the brain-burning aspect of this game is really strong, is Stefan Feld's Aquasphere. Now, Aquasphere is, I think, one of his less popular titles, but it's a tasty minstrel game, and the idea is you are scientists studying octopuses at the bottom of the ocean or something. You're doing research, and you're developing technologies, and like these other games I've talked about, you have a very limited number of actions you can do, and lots of different things you could pursue with those actions. So you find yourself swimming in possibilities and really struggling with how do I make the most of the limited actions I have, given all the things I could do. There's complications in Aquasphere, particularly in that the way that you score points is also limited by the things that you have. So, like, you could earn a bunch of points, but then if you don't have a black crystal, you can't get past a certain spot on the scoreboard, that sort of thing. It makes for really interesting gameplay. So I'm curious, listener, what are some games that burn your brain? What are games that make you really go into overdrive as you're trying to think about how to make it work, how to get the most out of your limited actions? Are they like Matainai, Last Will, Tricarion, Bunny Kingdom, or Aquasphere? Or do you have other ones I should be trying? Reach out to me via the channels I mentioned and let me know. In the meantime, I hope that your next outdoor walk is as pleasant as mine was. Thanks for joining me. Bye-bye. It's really good, but really brain burny. Really brain burny. That kind of feeling is very strong in that game.
to you by Rattlebox Games.